Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm your host, Liz Hyman, bringing the rescue boat to your sales challenges. In this ever-changing sales environment, it's easy for leaders to feel adrift. We're here to be the beacon guiding you to success. Each episode, I'm joined by top sales experts and practitioners who have navigated this waters and come out victorious. Together, we'll uncover the insights and strategies that will help you hit your sales targets and grow your business. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Sales SOS podcast. And I want to introduce you to everybody really quickly. This is a group of people that got together doing Clubhouse during COVID. And we thought we would bring the Clubhouse magic to you via podcast. So let me introduce everybody here. Bryn Tillman. Hi. Bill Gannon.
Hello.
Renee Bigelow. John Way.
Hello, everyone.
Jeff Bajorek.
Hey, hey.
Mike Simmons.
Hello.
And Chris Bowen, who his camera has decided not to work for him today. So can you say hi, Chris? You can't hear him either. He'll join us at some point. Okay, so this group is going to get together with a few other people on a regular basis, and we're going to bring to you the Sales SOS podcast. And today we're going to talk specifically about using AI in sales. So I want to start with just sort of a generic question. Everybody's talking about AI. Everybody's talking about it. Everybody thinks they need to be doing something. So what is everybody doing? So let's just sort of start. I don't know who wants to start the conversation. Maybe Jeff. What's going on with AI? I'm just going to surprise everybody.
Okay.
What's going on with AI in sales, and why is everybody talking about it?
Because it's the most exciting thing that we've seen in a long time. Because I've talked to people who think its impact will be on par with that of electricity. Think about that.
Wow.
And because it's a very emotionally polarizing concept, you've got people who are so inspired by it that they can't contain themselves. And you have people who are so afraid of it that they don't want to touch it. And whenever you have something really polarizing like that, you're going to get some emotional responses. And I've got some clients actually that specialize in creating and working with AI for their clients, custom software and consulting clients. And some of the takeaways that they have come up with, though, and I think this is really interesting, and I think this will jive. I'm curious to see what the rest of the panel thinks here, but they really categorize it on par with an intern. It's skilled, there's potential, but if you just let it go on its own, you're not going to get very good results. And so it requires diligent training. It requires patience. It requires a few deep breaths and recognizing where your inputs may have not produced desirable outputs. But AI is still a tool to do things that we want it to do. It's not off on its own yet, certainly not with sales AI. And I can still tell there are some definite tells when AI is doing the communicating versus when a person is.
Yeah, it's so funny because independently, that was the term I came up with yesterday talking to somebody about AI, is it's like an intern. It can do certain things, but should never be left unchecked.
Yes.
So, Mike, I want to jump to you real quickly. Bryn, I'm going to ask you to talk to us a little bit about LinkedIn a little bit, of course. But
really?
So, Mike, what are you thinking? What are you hearing? How are people reacting to this whole idea of AI in sales?
Well, I don't ever want to follow Bajorek again. So,
we're all done now.
I can tell you what I'm doing with it. And it's more about how do we use it to augment and amplify what the human can do. And we just went through a process of building a logo on something. And the way that we were able to communicate with the person who is helping us do the design work on the logo was prompt Dolly, get some information, then figure out which ones we like, and then share that with the person and say, this is what we'd like to add to it. And the feedback I got from the person was, hey, the tool did a lot of the heavy lifting. it's still ours because we had someone do the hand-drawn work associated with it, and they did an amazing job, and it was able to incorporate the colors. But I think this is the way that tool is supposed to be. It can be used internally. The other way that we use it is, for those of you who've been around me long enough, you know that I have a weird way of saying things. And I also think that everybody else can keep up. So when Jen wants me to translate things, I put some stuff into ChatGPT and then ask it to translate it into a different set of words, which helps. And it starts to change the way that we're able to communicate. So I think it's a tool that we can use to do really good things. But like any tools, a hammer in the hands of the wrong person can be a really bad thing. This tool can be a really bad thing if it's used by the wrong person for the wrong intent, or the wrong organization for the wrong intent.
Oh, yeah. And we're talking about wrong intent. You start thinking about hacking and security, and we get down a whole nother really frightening path. But let's go back to AI and sales. Bryn, tell me, what are you thinking about? What are you seeing? What are people saying? I know there's a lot of talk about it in LinkedIn.
Yeah. So AI for sales can really fall under 5 or 6 different buckets. There's messaging, right? There's email campaigns. There's content. There's I'm stuck. This is an objection that my client just gave me, and I don't know how to overcome it. Right. Like I could have scripts for video. I could go on and on and on. We're using it for all of those reasons in bits and pieces. Oh, you can use this to comment on a piece of content, which I don't 100% love right now. I could talk about that. But here is how we're really using it in a way that I think is a combination of authentic and compelling at the same time. We're interviewing our clients on Zoom, and we're taking a 3 to 5 minute rant on a topic, and then we're putting it in ChatGPT. So use this transcript only, do not research. Come up with a blog post, come up with a LinkedIn poll. We have prompts that do this, right? So we have a prompt that we've created that I could put in a transcript, and it'll put out a poll and the text for the poll, the hashtags for the poll, all that stuff, right? So coming up with prompts that can work with a transcript. And that's how we can get authentic to the seller's voice. At the same time, we can create content at scale. So that's just kind of the beginning. I can go deeper on any of those at any given time. So just call back when you're ready for that.
And Renee, I'm going to ask you to add on to that, because you've been talking a little bit about like how to really kind of key into the right voice and setting up your AI to do that.
Yeah. So I got lucky and fell in with a bunch of GPT-3 geeks early on in 2021. So I've been working with AI in marketing and sales for a while. Here are some places I feel like really work well. First of all, really, you need to think of things that are no one right answer. When you are looking for fact-based, then you start worrying about things like hallucinations. But if you are looking for things where there's no one right answer, it's a really great tool, and you have to be less worried about the risk there, right? So one of the top uses that I work with sales teams on is getting a really good prompt into the voice of the target persona. And your marketing team and your sales management can really help with that. And they can help create some good prompts that the rest of the sales team can use to practice some role playing and some specific situations that you get into. And you can tweak them from there. So like if your sales management and your brand team get together and give you a really good target persona, but someone's just a little bit different, like you can change that prompt and kind of say, well, this guy's a little bit of a cynic. So this is my target persona, but they're a little bit cynical about this. And so I want to make sure to, tiptoe their way into something. So you can really tweak those. And then you can add in a competitive analysis. So let's say you've gotten past your first call or your discovery calls and you're getting into some consideration, and they bring up competitors. So you're going to be talking about that with them next. You can take your battle cards or any other, even if you only have the public pricing information, you can scrape your competitor's website for their public packaging, pricing, any of that feature set. And then you can put your own in and ask the AI to do a comparison for you. And it'll give you blind spots that you aren't thinking of, especially if you put it in the language, in the target persona's perspective, right? You'll get some natural language back from what your target persona, some of that language they might be using, as Mike pointed out earlier, translating, right? Like you're getting it to translate in your target persona. So those are a couple that competitive analysis and that initial like kind of discovery call target persona thing that I think are really great. And one of the ways you can kind of help keep that consistency and make it a little bit better than an intern is if the input is coming from people with strategic knowledge, and then it's being used by people to upskill them. So you're kind of transferring that on over in an always on capacity. So a lot of the stuff I do after hours, right? Like I don't mind doing a chat with, any of the AIs while I'm watching a movie with my family or whatever. Like that's kind of normal. I kind of multitask a decent amount. So it's always on, right? So if I have a meeting the next day and I kind of want to work something out, or I'm writing something and I want to make sure it's in the right voice for the target persona, that I'm not using jargon that they wouldn't recognize, that always on piece. So I have that strategic input in the beginning, can transfer it across, and it's always on.
Thanks, Renee. I want to jump to Chris though for a second, because Renee sort of led us into this sales management, the sales leadership discussion, and using AI in sales leadership. And Chris, how are you using it with your team?
Well, I think probably the easiest way is, how is it that you're able to get more of your message aligned with your exact customer? Because the language that we're going to have typically from our marketing teams is a little bit generic, right? Because it's focusing either industry specific or particular role specific, but it's not getting it to that specific customer at that one customer or prospect, right? And so being able to leverage both our content and the voice of that particular customer is probably the best way I've found to use it. But there's other things that we also can do. If you look at some of the other applications that are out there, you can get fairly quick, high level information on a target account or a target person if their information's obviously in the overall web. And so being able to leverage it there to be able to get a quick hit. If you had an inbound lead that you weren't expecting, you've never done anything with this customer or this particular person before, you don't have any connections there, how is it that I can get up to speed with them, but still be able to respond quick enough so that lead doesn't go from warm right now to cold in very short time, right?
Thanks. Bill, I want to jump up to you now, because we're talking about voice, right? We're talking about speaking, and you're our expert. So how do you see AI helping people with expressing themselves better voice, more understandable? What kinds of things are you thinking about?
Yeah, we're always after people being as communicative, as clear as they can be. So let me put a big red circle with a line across. Do not recite anything that comes back from ChatGPT. Do not consider that your sales script, okay? Because it requires tons of auditing and checking and making sure, most importantly, that it's authentic to your voice. Liz, this goes back to sales DNA that your dad talks about. You want to be your authentic voice. You want to communicate to customers in an authentic way. Having said that, you and I, we all know that we are charged with contacting customers at times that we don't know that much about. Even if we can get standard online, ChatGPT is fantastic, I think, for at least doing those light lifting prompts like salesperson calling on Autodesk for the first time, interested in selling software. What would a script look like? And watch what comes back. It'll blow your mind. Don't read that, just study it and understand it. And I think it's a good shortcut. And we're all about Cliff Notes, right? Fastest way to get to the sale. I think we're always about shortcuts, and it's a great first step shortcut. gets you down the field to the 30-yard line, 50-yard line right away. And then it's up to you to do the rest of it. But in terms of folks who are always looking for the content that they can wrap their own voice around, I think it's become a really handy tool.
Yeah.
Autodesk, not yet a sponsor of the program, but if anybody knows anybody.
But
Autodesk, we would love
podcast is brought to you by the nice folks at Autodesk.
This is what happens in a sales podcast.
Immediately go into sales mode.
Right.
No, I think you're right. And I think that it starts taking us into this direction of what do we need to look up and get to quickly? So can I find information about the person I'm speaking to? Can I find information about my competition? Can I think of a next cue or a thing to say to a client that maybe I haven't thought of? Like, how do we use it to prompt creativity as opposed to thinking it is the creative? Because it is not the creative. It is only regurgitating what's already in it. There's nothing creative or new, right?
Well, and its creative could be a hallucination, right?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Do not submit it as a legal brief. That's our lesson number 1, right?
And Liz, here's just a quick counterpoint to that, or put in a prompt about a key competitor making the same pitch and see what it comes back with. It very well could expose something on your competitor. You may want to validate, of course, but it may grab something that goes, okay. If in fact it's legit and that's a claim and it sounds like it's meaty, you might want to think about how you protect your value prop in light of that. So
and understanding our competitor, understanding our client better. We never want to do the work. What's going on with our client? What's going on in the news? What's happened with them lately, right? Now you put that in and it pulls stuff up that's relevant. Again, fact check, but you have a starting place. So John, I have not forgotten you, but I'm waiting for the John is our tech guru, the most tech savvy of us by about 100 times. So what are you thinking about? How are you using this? What are you thinking about how it should be used in sales? What are your thoughts?
Actually, it's interesting you brought up the question about using AI to prompt creativity. So the biggest thing that I've seen with some of our customers is that they would say, okay, let's say that I'm doing a white paper, for example, or I want to do a blog post, for example, about this particular topic. They would say, give me 3 different perspectives, and then I'm going to pick which ones that I like, potentially really interesting. So I thought that was a really interesting, as again, to your point, Liz, about prompting creativity, it gives you 3 different perspectives that you could potentially think about. The second one that kind of echoes back to Renee, what Renee was talking about was not only that, but let's suppose that you're writing this blog article in 3 different voices. One is a millennial, one is business professional, one is journalistic. Like, what does that look like? And so again, it really helps you think about like how you're going to write this particular piece of article or blog or something like that, which I thought was very interesting. So Bill kind of talked about like having, don't regurgitate it, which is what we, definitely espouse, but having the AI to generate these different versions, like version 1, version 2, version 3, that was really insightful. And that really definitely prompts the creativity. And to kind of harken back to Jeff, when you were talking about like treating AI as like an intern, one thing that actually bubbled up as part of this was the fact that I think a lot of people forget how hard it is to communicate expectations to an intern. Like, you can't just be a one-liner and it just comes back. It doesn't work that way. And literally, if you just tell that to the AI, they will do that, and it's going to be wrong. So you have to really think about what you're trying to ask the intern to do. And I thought your example of the intern was so brilliant.
Thank you. And Bryn, I know you have something to add, but I have literally given specific prompts to AI, particularly in DALL-E, and then it'll come back and it'll produce an image that says it includes this and includes this. And I have prompted it back. Both of those are incorrect. Please try again. Like, the thing doesn't even spell its own prompts right in the images sometimes. And we do have these expectations that hey, this is the next level intelligence. It's got superhuman capabilities. Of course, it's going to get no, it doesn't get a lot of this stuff right. And I have one more thing to add, but Bryn, I want you to go first.
Oh, well, one of the things you can do is you can ask ChatGPT to help you prompt. So when I'm in ChatGPT and I go in and I ask it something and it doesn't respond, I will say, I'm a little confused. This is what I was looking for. What prompt should I have used? And literally, ChatGPT will help me communicate better with itself.
Go ahead, Renee.
I want to add on to what John said. I think it is such an important point that one sentence is not enough direction to get high quality work, right? And this is going to be a little controversial, so it might make a lot of people uncomfortable. But what you put in those prompts and how little you put in, or garbage in, garbage out, essentially, is going to be a reflection on your relationship to the work, right? Like, so we get better if we make the AI better, and it makes us more clear, regardless of what it gives us back. It reflects back to us. It gets us in the right headspace to have the conversation. It literally, so I built some GPTs for the GPT store on OpenAI, on ChatGPT. And literally the whole flow and the whole reason that I built them out is because people take a lot of shortcuts with things that are important but tedious. Mm-hmm. And so, like, it forces you, it's programmed to force you into saying, who is your target audience? What is the goal? What is this for? Right? Like, but in a conversational way, because we don't always do that. And I'm guilty of it as well. And I think it forces you into thinking that through, which gets you ready for a conversation with a human.
I think one of the coolest things about it is I can screw up on that and then go back and reprompt at that level and then see what changes as we go down different branching scenarios. Yeah. I am unable to do that with my wife. One day, I hope that happens, and we'll be able to communicate in that manner where I can kind of push the rewind and go backward. And to the point that Brim was talking about with how would you prompt it? What we've actually used is ChatGPT to create a prompt that we then drop into DALL-E. So now we're getting the information from one, applying it in another context. And then Renee, what did you say that was controversial?
I know, I was waiting.
That most people don't want to hear that it's their own foibles of why they aren't getting better work from technology or from a person.
So that would just be truth. I don't know if that's controversial.
Look in the mirror.
The truth is undefeated. Here's.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Let's argue about it. Here's what. This is just a little bit of personal experience on my or from my point of view. I looked at AI as something with so much capability, and I don't know. I'm curious the rest of you. There's so much capability. I didn't know where to start. I didn't know what was possible. I saw people doing things around me, and I'm like, wow, that's really. I wouldn't have thought of that, and wow, I wouldn't have thought of that. My challenge to anybody listening right now, especially if you lead a company, play with this. Spend the $20 a month for GPT, spend whatever. The stuff is affordable. I don't care which language model you use. I don't care if you're an Anthropic person or an OpenAI person, or you want to go Copilot or Gemini, whatever. None of those are sponsors of this program, by the way. Not yet. Play around with this stuff and see what is possible, because when we get to creativity, when we get to prompting, the more you play with it, the more you're going to recognize tangibly what is possible. And only then can you really let your creative juices flow, and can you really see what this thing is capable of. We get to direct what this does. And the barrier to entry is very low. You're either in on this thing, or you are going to be lapped by this thing. And there's just, there's no reason not to. And so if you lead a company, you should be playing around with this, and you should probably have somebody in your company playing around with this with designated time to just go nuts. I know that sounds scary. That's probably more controversial than the truth. But like, let somebody go nuts with this and see what it can do, and that's the kind of innovation that it's going to take to really stay ahead.
Yeah, and I think you're right about CEOs or leaders. Like just letting somebody else do it and assuming that they know what they're doing is dangerous, because if you haven't played with it and you don't understand what it can do, what it might do, what it sometimes does, you're not really going to be able to lead your team. It's sort of like saying, yeah, just go ahead and engineer this for me, but I don't know what is going to go into that, so I'm not going to worry about it, right? So any last thoughts about sort of generally using AI in sales, things we should think about or include? Yeah, Renee, go ahead, jump in.
Yeah, I have another one that I think is really, really important, because we've talked about kind of leading up to conversations. There's another flip side of that I think is really big, which is if you have recordings. Bryn brought up transcripts earlier, right? So if you have recordings of conversations that you've had with customers, there's a gold mine in there of unstructured data, right? We have their natural language patterns. We have the things that they're telling us. There are so many signals that customers give us for product development, for marketing, for sales, for customer success, all of these signals that are regularly missed or not shared because the person in the conversation doesn't understand how important those things are for other things. Now you get a repository of, so let's just use a SaaS company as an example. There are lots of demos. There are lots of demos recorded. Ethically, there should be permission on recordings. I'm not going to go deep into that, but let's make sure. So you can also just strip out the names. There's no need to identify the file with the person's name, right? Like, so we're not putting PII or personal identifiable information in. We're taking that's one of our risks, right? That we would spill someone else's secrets or something. So particularly if we're working with a corporate account that doesn't include training data, then we're in a much better position now. We can take these recordings from our customers and put a bunch of them in, and we can start looking for trends that inform us for lots of things. But almost always that's coming from sales, because sales has the contact with the customer more often. Might be customer success still a form of sales, right? But there's a lot of gold in that.
So that's the other side of AI, though, that, we're sort of talking about the prompting side of it. And we're going to talk in a minute about some of the other things that it can do. But this whole idea of pulling out the information in a sea of data, and whether it's video or whether it's audio or whether it's data of some other sort, AI can do that in a time frame and in a way that people just can't match. And we don't think about that as much when we're thinking about AI right now, because it's so new to us, I think.
And you can assign the different roles too, right? So you have all that unstructured data. Let's say you have, 100 customer interviews that you put together. You have all those transcripts, you put them in one place. Now you can say, okay, I'm the product manager. Like, what are some trends that I should be aware of? I'm the head of marketing. What are some trends? So this is something a CEO can do to kind of get play around and understand a little more, get closer to their customer, right? In a different way. I'm the head of marketing. What are some things that I should see, or some trends here? I'm, going on a sales call. What are some things I might want to, so you can just change your own persona as you're interacting with it each time too.
Okay. Any final words? Who wants to wrap up our discussion about AI in sales?
You mean the very last word to ever be said about AI and sales? Like no one can follow it.
Are you sure? Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Oh, then don't look at me.
Which has been said is just play with it. If you are not embracing AI, I guarantee you are going to fall behind. It just is. There's no way you'll be able to stay competitive if you're not embracing it. So just kind of let it, you don't have to own every inch of it, but start playing with it and start seeing how it can enhance your business and help you keep a competitive edge.
I think that's I'm gonna wrap this up with the final word then. But I think that we're so worried about, is AI going to replace me? And I think that one of the key things here is you will be replaced if you don't learn to use AI, right? because other people will be leveraging it to
Right.
improve their game. So you've got to step up. Don't worry about it replacing you. Right now, worry about how do I use it to make me better at what I do, whatever that is. And that's a wrap of this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope today's episode has equipped you to navigate the sales seas with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on YouTube or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep sailing towards those sales goals. I'm Liz Hyman, your captain here at the Sales SOS podcast, saying smooth sailing and successful selling.